Well, good morning, folks. It is a cold, late fall day today here at the very end of November, and I've been telling you guys for the last, I don't know, month or something that I've been having issues sourcing my potting soil. Well, I'm going to show you guys today what my solution is, at least for now, and kind of show you the difference in a professional potting soil mix versus a DIY potting soil mix, like the DIY type of mix that I've always used, that I've shown you guys over and over and over again, and kind of compare the two and make some comments on that, and then see what conclusions that we can draw on DIY mix versus a professional mix, and hopefully develop a good long-term plan in dealing with potting mix at an affordable way. So hope this is helpful for you guys today. So y'all come on in here and let's have a look at this potting soil. Now, I made a run yesterday to a nursery supply place. I have to drive 150 miles one way to get there, but is what it is as far as that goes. It's a day well spent. So the things I want to show you that I purchased while I was there today, or yesterday, right here you'll see up under the tarp is the actual potting soil that I bought. And this tarp, I just use it for everything, and it just keeps it from flying out and all that as I travel. And this black roll is a 12-foot by 300 feet long piece of ground cover. We just always need ground cover, and we used the last that we had on our last project out in the field. And then there's a couple of bags here, these white bags of propagation mix that I bought, and I'll be showing those to you on another video coming up soon, and that's just another thing that I'm trying out. Let's dive into the potting soil and just kind of see what's going on with it. Now, what I have used for my potting soil for a long time is I'm sitting right in the middle of this small pile here, and this is what's left of my hardwood bark. And this is double ground hardwood bark mulch. It's very difficult to find, at least in my area, but I know of one place. They've stopped making it, at least for now. I think they've got a breakdown or whatever. So the point is I can't just wait around forever waiting on them to solve their problem. And I don't have this as an ingredient. I've got a little bit left here. Maybe I can mix this in with my pine bark that I use. You know, my pine bark pile you guys are familiar with. And probably, you know, a couple hundred more plants or something that I can get out of this. But that's not much. So I've had to go with a different source. And what I chose to buy was at a nursery supply place that I know of that just has all kinds of nursery supplies. They have a ready-made or custom mixtures available for all sorts of applications. So anything from soil that you would use for, you know, growing trees in 25+ gallon size pots, to propagation mixes, to annual mixes, to just general nursery mixes like I would use, kind of an all-purpose mixture for everything. So I have a mixture that's ready-made, and if I didn't want to mix anything in with it, it's ready to be used as it is right now. Now, I've uncovered most of my trailer here, and this is 4 yards of this potting mix. So, you know, I could have got probably one more yard in here, but, you know, I really want to just try this out and kind of see how it does and see how I do with it before, you know, I wind up getting a whole lot more. But, you know, one thing that, hey, there's a big leaf. One thing that I can see in this mix for sure, just eyeballing it, is that it's got a lot more stuff in it than mine does. Mine that I DIY here at my place has 2 ingredients in it, and that's it, and it works really well. So I want to dive into this a little bit and see what all is in here and just kind of show you what that looks like and, you know, what each one of those ingredients' purpose is. Now, I have taken a scoop out of my trailer and laid it here on my potting table, and I want to just kind of go through a little bit of what I see in this potting mix, and also what was listed. I mean, I'm not just making this up as I go. The place has a list of, you know, you can get this mix or that mix, and this mix has this in it, that one has that in it, and you can mix and match all kinds of stuff. So, but this particular mix, a couple of things here that I want to point out that are maybe fairly obvious, but you got some pine bark in here, the same pine bark that I use. It's pretty finely ground. These are not nuggets, these are not chunks, or there's a lot of different names for them, but these are pine fines or finely ground pine bark. That's a big part of the volume that's here. Second, and you can't like pick it out as easily, but there's peat in here, which is like Canadian peat, and that's another staple ingredient. And what you have in those 2 ingredients is you have bark for drainage, and you have peat for moisture retention. So your two primary ingredients here, I know, are peat and pine bark, and I suspect those two things alone would probably make a pretty good potting soil, and I'd say probably 70% bark and 30% peat or something like that, but maybe 80% or even more bark with peat. But you know, this is all about what's available locally to you, and your potting soil won't look like mine. And if I were trying to, you know, copy your potting soil recipe, I probably wouldn't be able to do it. But just understand, moisture retention and drainage, those are your two things. I can also see some vermiculite in here, and that's the little white things. You know, you got perlite and you got vermiculite, and you know, these are sometimes people see this in potting soil and they assume that, oh, that potting soil must be good because it's got them little white balls in it. Well, perlite and vermiculite, all they do is they kind of tweak the formula's ability again to retain water or drain, and that probably at least partially depends on what your other ingredients are in your mix, on how much of each of those that you might need or that you might do best with. But I didn't mix this up, and I didn't choose the ingredients, so I don't really know exactly what the best mixture is for making a custom mix like this. You're not going to be able to see it, but I also see just some very trace amounts of sand in here. I mean, it may be 1 or 2% of the volume of this, so there's a little bit of sand in there, and I also know that there's some gypsum in here, which is just something that helps with the pH of the mixture. And to be honest with you, I don't deal with pH. I don't test it. I don't even know what it is, really. And all I know is that my plants do fine in my mixture here, and I'm going to show you that in just a minute. My plants do fine in my mixture, and I never tested or checked any of that, and I don't know how they could be growing any better. So for the mixture that I have here, that's kind of what it's going to look like, and I'm going to be happy to give it a try. And I now want to compare this to my mix that I normally use and show you that. And then I have my mixture right here. This little pile is my mixture. This is the mixture that I just purchased in, and we're going to talk about cost on these in just a minute. So now I'm looking at my mixture, and it's really interesting because, you know, they really look similar. There's not a ton of difference in the two visually. It will say that the one that I bought custom made is a little bit more fluffy, and that's going to be because of that peat that's in there. But you know, once that gets wet, you know, that's really going to, I think, tighten up a little bit. I really don't know. But and then mine is here, and the two ingredients that are in it are pine bark, which is, I mean, it's just these little chunks that are all through it, and then the black that you see in it is the hardwood bark mixed in with it, and that's it, and that's all I typically use, and I hope to be able to use that again in the future, because the cost difference on these is it's pretty significant. Now I'm standing over here in my pine bark pile, and I got this delivered about a year ago here, and this was a semi truckload. I think it was 70 yards or something like that. I don't remember exactly. I've used probably 20 yards of it this year so far, and this worked out, I don't even remember exactly, but it was around $12 to $15 a yard for this pine bark. And my hardwood bark that I showed you a little bit ago towards the beginning of the video, what's left of it, it's about the same price. So when I combine this with my hardwood bark, I'm probably around $12, $13, $14 a yard on my potting mix. Now my trailer of custom made potting mix that I brought home yesterday, 4 yards of this was $50 a yard. So I've got $200 worth of potting soil just in my trailer. So, you know, that's really not a terrible price to pay for a ready-made potting soil mix, but I will say that it's about 4 times, you know, give or take a little bit, but it's about 4 times more expensive than me making my own potting soil. So when I make my own potting soil, it works out to around 22 cents per pot. You can get 220, 240 trade gallons out of 1 yard of potting soil. So I'm going to just kind of use rough numbers and say 900 plants that I can pot, trade gallons, with 4 yards of potting soil. So you go in this route, it's going to cost me about 22, 24 cents per pot. Going the pine bark and hardwood bark route, it's more like 6 cents a pot, 8 cents a pot, something like that, maybe 5 cents a pot. I'm not sure. So while you're still going this route with a nice ready-made, good to go fertilizer, or potting soil, excuse me. I also failed to mention that it's also got fertilizer in it, some trace minerals for starting plants, but I don't even care about that. If you've only got, 25 cents in potting soil in a pot that you wind up selling for $8, that's really good. So I consider it a blessing that we've been able to mix our own potting soil for, 4, 5, 6, 7 cents a pot, something like that. Again, that's a trade gallon size pot. Your potting soil is going to always be a pretty significant expense in your nursery. So, it's one of those things you have to figure out the practicalities of it, but you also have to figure out the economics of it and just what can you get where you live and how much is it going to cost, because this is going to vary a lot, region to region in America or wherever you live, on what ingredients are available to make your potting soil with. Now, one thing that will reduce my cost per plant a little bit with my new potting soil is I'm going to continue to mix my pine bark in with it. For my pine bark pile, I'm going to mix it right in with this stuff and just make the ratio of pine bark in here even higher than it is. I don't think that will cause any issues. There are some people that grow plants only in pine bark alone, nothing else. That's going to be things grown in much larger pots, 5 gallon, 7 gallon and up size pots, which I really don't do much, if any of that. But I think this mixture is going to be fine, at least for now, until I can get my other source usable again for making my own with hardwood bark. But something else that's worth mentioning here is, I know this because you guys have asked me this question many, many, many times in one form or another. You guys get way too stressed out about all the exact things about getting your potting soil together. There's so many recipes, infinite recipes for potting soil that work. I'm just showing you one that works for me where I live. My recipe is pine bark and ground hardwood bark. That's my recipe. Well, I wound up finding some that's a little bit different than that, but I'm going to use it because it's what I have. In your area, it might be something different. In fact, it probably is something different. And it's not that I have something that's better. You may have something that's better than I have. This is just what I have. Get online, get on YouTube and look for DIY potting soil mixes or cheap ways to make great potting soil or something like that. And there's just endless videos that come up about how to make your own potting soil. So don't overcomplicate the potting soil part of the equation. Well, all right, guys, that's going to do it for today's video. I'll keep you guys updated as I go and as we get into doing a lot of potting and kind of how this mixture seems to be working out. And just don't let yourself be troubled about not being able to find the perfect potting soil. There's no such thing as the perfect potting soil. Just use what's available in your area and what works. It doesn't matter what I use. I'm just showing you guys this, hopefully, to just kind of let you know that there's more than one way to do it. So I'm going to continue to mix in my pine bark, continue to get this mountain knocked down and making good use of it, but you don't have to have all of this. You just need what's available locally to you. Be willing to drive 100 miles, 200 miles to go get you a load of something if you need to. But don't give up on your nursery just because your potting soil mixture is a little bit tricky to figure out. So, guys, I love y'all. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next one.